the time out to come and share with us. I do underscore the word share because the intention for tonight is to hear from you. We do have some information that we want to explain based upon what we've done thus far, but the real intent is to make sure that we gather from you your information, your questions, and your concerns that we can then turn as part of the final report that must go to the Minister of Finance, who is also, of course, our Premier, the Honorable Paula A. Cox, because she, in her role as the Minister of Finance, appointed the Price Control Commission in July of 2011. As you are aware, the format for tonight will be that each of our panelists will give some opening remarks in the area of about 3 minutes to give you a sense of context as to where they are coming from and what their perspectives are, and also share with you some of their information. And then we want to open up the floor to questions. My role tonight would be to guide the questions in terms of ensuring that persons do give questions as opposed to giving long statements. I would ask you to be respectful in terms of, if you have a question, you probably will have a comment. Give a short comment and then give a very short question, a very concise question, to allow our panelists to be able to provide whatever information they might have. So that's that. My name, I'm not sure if you know, but my name is Anthony Richardson, and I also was appointed to the Price Control Commission in July of 2011. And tonight we have our panelists. Ms. Peniston, Lucia Peniston, is our chairperson for the Price Control Commission, and she will go through and give a brief introduction of each of the panelists. So I will defer to her in that context. And one other person, another surprise I want to say, but you'll see is someone that you all know, will be joining us in a short while to also be part of the panel, and we understand why he is currently delayed. That was part of our process. And so, without
And I would also like to welcome you to the Price Control Commission's first public meeting entitled Bermuda Has High Food Prices, Fact or Fiction. My name is Lucia Peniston, and I will be representing the Price Control Commission on this evening's panel. I would firstly also like to thank you all for coming out this evening. Your input is invaluable to this process and will greatly assist the Commission with the completion of its final report to the Minister of Finance. Just to give you some background about the Price Control Commission, the Commission was appointed in July of 2011 by the Premier and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Paula A. Cox, JP MP, under the authority of the Price Commission Act of 1974, in response to concern over price increases of food staples. The members of the Commission include myself, Daniel Reese, who is right there, and Mr. Anthony Richardson. And our mandate also includes essential goods and services, but we have initially limited our focus to essential foods. The terms of reference for the Commission include the following: obtaining the relevant economic data from the Department of Statistics to identify the essential goods and services that should be the focus of the inquiry, inviting interest groups, consumers, and individual Bermudians who wish to provide data, statistics, and other information to make submissions to the Commission, inviting input from wholesalers, supermarkets, convenience stores, discount stores, and other businesses that provide essential goods and services, consulting with the various unions, with the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, and other employer groups, including the Chamber of Commerce and the Bermuda Employers Council, obtaining information from shipping companies and other importers regarding the current cost of shipping, both air and sea, and finally, producing a report for the Minister recommending how government can assist in ensuring that customers can get the most reasonable price for essential goods and services. During the past 8 months, we have gathered information by meeting with respective representatives from major wholesalers, supermarkets, and charities that represent the interests of children and seniors. We have also met with trade union representatives, the Chamber of Commerce, and reviewed existing data from the Department of Statistics. What are price controls? Well, price controls are when an entity, typically a government, tries to externally set the price of something. Governments have been trying to set maximum or minimum prices since ancient times, dating back to the Old Testament, when interest on loans to fellow Israelites was prohibited. Price controls can be very appealing, especially during times of hardship, since they hold out the promise of protecting groups that are particularly hard-pressed to meet price increases. However, price controls often have less than desirable effects. For example, assume that the supply and demand for bread has been balanced in the market at its current price. Government then decides to fix a lower maximum price for bread. The result is that the supply of bread will likely decrease if sellers cannot make a profit at the reduced price, while the demand for it will increase since the lower price makes it more attractive to the consumer. The result will be excess demand and empty shelves. Although some consumers will be lucky enough to purchase bread at the lower price, others will be forced to do without. In 1973 and 1979, drivers in the United States got a taste of life in the third world when the U.S. government set a maximum price for gasoline. Dealers sold gas on a first-come, first-served basis, and drivers had to wait in long lines to buy gasoline. Due to the fact that Bermuda imports a significant portion of its food, we are forced to accept the prices that other countries charge. Our discussions with wholesalers and retailers revealed that our local Bermuda prices are impacted by global events, which I am sure is not a surprise to any of you. One recent example of this relates to the price of grain. As grain producers divert some of their crops to supply the needs of alternative energy sources, the price of grain increases, which in turn increases the price of foods that use grain. Due to our location, the landed cost, which will be discussed in more detail by our panelists, is also greatly impacted by shipping and other transportation costs. Therefore, the price of fuel, which can often be extremely volatile, directly impacts the landed cost of our goods. Due to these external factors, fixing a price that would cover costs and provide for a consistent profit, however small, would be difficult. A fixed pricing strategy would also be contrary to Bermuda's free market economy. Therefore, as an alternative, in its interim report to the Minister of Finance, the Commission has recommended a fixed margin on specified goods, and the impact of this recommendation is currently being considered. Joining me on tonight's panel include Mr. Ed Souza of Butterfield and Vallis. Mr. Souza is a Bermudian who was educated at Mount St. Agnes Academy and has worked for almost 40 years in the food distribution industry. He spent the first 5 years in retail distribution with A1 Group Limited and has spent 33 years in wholesale distribution with Butterfield and Company Limited, starting in purchasing as well as sales and marketing. Mr. Souza has been a chairman of the Mount St. Agnes Academy Board of Governors. He has served on the Bermuda government's Treatment of Offenders Board as well as the Immigration Board. He is a director of Neptune Group, owners and operators of MV Oleander. Mr. Giorgio Zanol of the Lindos Group. Mr. Zanol was born in Cavalese, Italy. He graduated from Hotel Management School in Italy in 1959 and worked in various hotels in Germany, France, England, and Switzerland before coming to Bermuda to work at the Carlton Beach Hotel, also known as the Sonesta Beach. In 1968, Mr. Zanol began his work at Lindos, and he is still there today. He is an avid runner and philanthropist, and his rewards for service include a recipient of Rotary International's Paul Harris Fellow Award. Mr. Zanol is also an honorary member of the Lions Club International. Mr. Craig Simmons. Mr. Simmons is a senior lecturer in economics at the Bermuda College, and he is in fact teaching a class right now, so he will be joining us shortly. His teaching experience includes micro and macroeconomics as well as ecological economics. He has also taught courses in sustainable development at University of Hartford and Bentley College. Ms. Claudette Fleming. Claudette Fleming has a background in social work, having obtained a bachelor's degree in sociology and social work, both with a concentration in gerontology from Lakehead University, Ontario, Canada. In addition, she holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Toronto with a concentration in administration and gerontology, along with a certificate in aging and the life course. Claudette serves as the Executive Director of Age Concern Bermuda and has served in this capacity since the year 2000. Age Concern Bermuda was founded as a charity in 1978 with an original mandate to advise the government on issues that affect seniors. Age Concern's mission has been revised over the years, and today the organization's mission is to link seniors to services that meet their needs. And finally, Mr. Cordell Riley. Mr. Raleigh is the Managing Director of Profiles of Bermuda, a company he founded in 1998. He is a former government statistician, has authored numerous articles in tourism and human resource fields, and he has spoken at a number of international conferences. He also conducts periodic polls on topical issues in Bermuda from a social, economic, and political perspective. So at this time, and I know I've exceeded my 3 minutes, I would like to thank all of our guest panelists for participating in this evening's discussions, and I will hand over the floor to our next panelist. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. Since they allow me only about 3 minutes, I might take a little bit more. I would like to give you a short history of Lindo so you will know who we are, where we are, and where we came from. It was in 1950 that Mr. Lindo, my father-in-law, a butcher by trade, was selling fresh Bermuda meat from a shack in Garthorne Estate in Devonshire. The late 50s, the landlord asked my father-in-law and my mother-in-law to move out of the farm, so they built a small house, and in the corner of Brighton Hill and Washington Road, and underneath the living room and the kitchen was a Papa and Mama store, where again they start selling fresh Bermuda meat and freshly made cherries by my father-in-law, very little groceries and some fresh vegetable grown by him. And that's why at that time the store was called Lindo's Meat Market. In 1968, my brother and I started the family business. In 1972, we went a little bit bigger to 3,000 square feet instead of 500. 10 years later, in 1982, we went 6,000 square feet. And 8 years later, 88, we went to 12,000 square feet. And by that time, because we were selling more groceries, we renamed the store Lindo's Market. It was in 1993 that we had a chance to buy the former Giant in Warwick, a food store. And after major renovation, we renamed the store to keep in with the family, because it was a family business and still is, Lindo's Family Foods. And the last renovation that we did, extension, was in 2003 in Devonshire. Now we are about 18,000 square feet. And now we are very proud of what we achieved. We are still 70 members of the family actively involved in the business. But our pride is that we are almost all the time in the forefront of the industry, of the retail industry. We were the first one to have complete scanning, the first one to have blue recyclable bags, the first one to have electronic labels on the shelf, actually the only one in Bermuda. And then about 3 years ago, we gave away 40,000 of the green bags just to encourage people to reuse and recycle the bags. So we can, instead of using brown bags. And 10 months ago, we did the last thing. We put solar panel on our, we were the first large commercial building to put the solar panel on our roof. So we are very careful. We care about the environment. We care about the future generation. And then, of course, with the solar panel, we save money that could stay in Bermuda, foreign currency, rather than sending abroad to buy oil. So again, here we are now, forced to be reckoned with, and we still work hard. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay. Let's come off, you think?
Sure.
All right. I have a bit of a prop. No. I'll take a prop. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased and proud on behalf of the fine folks that I work with at Butterfield and Vallis to say thank you to the Price Control Commission for inviting us for this evening's forum. This particular slide, so I'm over here because I need to look at that to prompt me, so to keep me on track so that I can do 6 minutes in 4 minutes. That particular slide is particularly interesting because it shows the various elements involved with importation. It starts with, up in the top left-hand corner, you'll see a manufacturing plant, and then you'll see a steamship bringing the product to Bermuda. And then you'll see our warehouse, retail shelves, and some happy staff members selling product. My new best friend Clyde up there, he just switched over on cue. Thank you, Clyde. So this evening I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are, Butterfield and Vallis, what we do, food costs and food inflation, and that's really what I think we're all here about. We'll do that, and then we'll just talk a little bit about consumer choices. So Butterfield and Company was founded in the early 1920s. We have 200 employees. I think we have one work permit out of those 200 employees, so we are committed to Bermudanization. We have a drug-free workplace policy, which we're particularly proud of, and we think it makes a big difference, and we think more Bermuda companies should look and consider their own workplace policy. We have been, in the past 3 years, voted one of the top 10 employers in Bermuda. We're very proud of that as well. So we distribute, what we do is we distribute foodstuffs to supermarkets, grocery stores, hotels, and restaurants, and we have over 900 customers. So anyone from, it could be a convenience store to a large supermarket to a little hamburger place, they're all our customers and they come and purchase from us. We import from over 300 suppliers from around the world. So we bring in from Europe, from the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South America. And we carry, this is a very significant number, we carry about $10 million worth of inventory. And that becomes very important when there's a hurricane hitting to Bermuda, so that we have about a month or 2 months buffer just in case our ties to the United States are cut off. From an import statistics, Bermuda brings in about 70% of its foodstuffs from the United States. So the United States is often considered the Western world's food basket. It certainly is Bermuda's food basket. So the majority of the food we bring in from the United States. We do bring in food from Canada and as I said earlier, from Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and even South America. There are 3 shipping lines that serve Bermuda, and we use all 3 of them. 2 weekly services out of the New Jersey area. So there's Port Elizabeth, New Jersey. The Oleander comes to us every Monday or Sunday evening, depending on the time of the year. Then there's the Bermuda Islander, which comes out of Salem, New Jersey. And then there's the Summers Island, which comes from Fernandina Beach in Florida. And that comes 2 out of 3 weeks. It's a little bit of a longer journey, and that schedules 2 out of 3 weeks. So the significance of this box is 1 cubic foot. So if you were wondering if this box was frozen pizza, 1 cubic foot of frozen pizza, the freight cost on that, and somebody help me because I can't see the end, is that $5.11? Yeah? So, okay, so you've got paper is actually the cheapest. That's $2.42 a cubic foot. So if this was a paper product, it would cost $2.42 for ocean freight. So the next one down, does that say $5.11? Okay, so if that was frozen pizza, it would be $5.11. Produce, if this was a box of tomatoes, that's $4.50. So that's the significance of ocean freight costs to our imports. I apologize for this slide. It's not as good as I'd like it to be. I have a hard copy over here, and I might talk you through it. And I'll try something else, because this is a significant slide. What we did, if we said to you a box of tomatoes is $17, that probably wouldn't mean too much. But if we said to you for every dollar that we spend on tomatoes, that's what it lands for. So that's where we are. So can people see that any better? Yeah. Okay. So the first item on the left, which I think is significant, that tells us sugar or flour. So for every dollar that Butterfield and Vallis spends on sugar or flour, that is going to land in Bermuda for $1.25. Now, flour and sugar do not have duty. So that's just the costs of transportation for the most part. No, that's for every dollar we spend. For every dollar we spend. So that's probably the best common denominator that I could think of for tonight's presentation. So for every dollar we spend on macaroni, that lands for $1.51, so 51%. So that includes duty. If you looked along that line there, you'll see duty. So again, that's 10% and cents on duty. If we came over here, we see toilet tissue, and that's 23 cents. So it's 22% on duty. So that $1 that we send overseas, and we send, as a community, the import community probably sends over about $3 million a week for purchases. So for toilet tissue, it starts out at $1 and it ends up at about $1.64. And that's before our markup. So the cost of getting goods to Bermuda is expensive. Let's say, for example, and I'm not saying that that's what it is, but let's say, for example, between the retailer and the wholesaler, it's 50%. Let's just say, so you'll add 80 cents to that, and now you're at about $2.50. We tell our suppliers who ask us, what's the food cost in Bermuda? We tell them 2 to 3 times what it is in the U.S. And that's about what it is, really. And duty, as you can see, duty for the most part doesn't significantly impact those prices. So when we hear, and it's a good question to ask, but when we hear people say, can government give relief on duties? It's a good question to ask, but in some cases, particularly with essentials, it won't have an awful lot of impact. Okay, Clyde. The rate of inflation. So this is the Bermuda government statistical department rate of inflation. So at the end of December for the year 2011, the rate of inflation was 2.9% for Bermuda. The rate of inflation for food was 3%. Now this is kind of an interesting slide. What we did here is we looked back. The government said in their basket of goods there were grapes, 3 things they pointed out: grapes, spare ribs, and whole chickens that went down like double digits. So our own information had grapes went down about 30%, and apples went up. Well, that's not really realistic of how the food goes, but that's what is made up of a basket of goods. So it's subject to a large degree on variations like that. Our own basket of goods, in Butterfield and Vallis, we've been doing it for a number of years now, we have our basket of goods, and it's our top 50 to 60 sellers. And we compared, for the year ending December 2011, our rate of inflation, and somebody help me, 2.78? 2.76. So if we go to the next slide.
Yeah?
Yes.
This is Anthony. What I need to be mindful of is having you conclude so we can ask some more questions. Okay.
Okay, I tell you that 6 minutes we're going to be. All right. The rate of inflation in the U.S., all items, 3%. Food was 4.7. Canada, you can see that. Bermuda, rate of inflation, all items, 2.9. Food was 3. The CPI, 2.9, fuel and power, I think 13, health 7, food 3, and rent 1. I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'll skip this slide. This is our food chain. So the food chain to Bermuda, farmers, manufacturers, brokers, rail, trucking, ocean freight, Butterfield and Vallis, plus 21 distributors. So there are about 22 distributors on the island. There are something like 21 supermarkets on the island, as well as 19 convenience stores. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces. Now, Ed stole some time from me, so I'm going to steal some time from Cordell, and he's going to be short in his presentation. I am Claudette Fleming, the Executive Director of Age Concern, and my presentation will be really short. You're probably wondering, okay, how do we fit into this picture? As many of you know and probably have heard over and over again, we have a growing seniors population. Right now it stands at about 12%, and by 2030 it'll be around 24%. Age concern, our mission and our interest in subjects like these is to link seniors to services that meet their needs. Our overall objective is to bring the charitable, the private, and also the public services together so that when seniors are accessing services, they are not meeting with obstacles. And there are a wide range of stakeholder groups that seniors use. These are just some of the categories that they could potentially use services from. And under each of these categories, there are actual hundreds of organizations that they make contact with. Now, the question that you're interested in tonight, I would imagine, is there food available in my sector, in the charitable sector? Are there the resources, are there the services that when someone is really in need, they can get their services? And the answer to that question is yes. And I'll give you some examples. They're a faith-based organization. Now, having that category 4 that we refer to on a regular basis. But as you know, there are hundreds of churches in Bermuda, and we have no way of knowing whether they provide groceries, vouchers, or services as well. We also have charitable organizations. There are about 5 providers that provide food aid charitably. There are donations from service providers, and I'm happy to say organizations like Mr. Sousa's Butterfield and Dallas is one of our link partners at Age Concern. I'm sure Linda is also, and Marketplace is also another link partner of Age Concern. These organizations from time to time do provide charitable donations, not only for our functions, but also for seniors that we refer who are in need. We do not have any idea as to the extent because there's no one keeping a record of that. In terms of sponsorship for food, there's money available through the financial assistance program. There are charitable organizations, we happen to be one, that from time to time can provide vouchers and money to purchase food. There are faith-based groups that support seniors in particular with money for things like groceries, and of course there's also families. And individuals, and we have no idea the extent to which individuals support family members and so on in the purchasing of food. Is there enough being done to help the financially disadvantaged of our community? I don't know. We do not have an accurate enough picture of the extent of the need, nor do we have an accurate picture of who's meeting that need and how. So what are the challenges in terms of gauging whether or not people are suffering from not having or suffering from prices being too high, that they cannot get the foods that they need, particularly the essential foods? Well, first of all, when it comes to the charitable sector, there is no way to gauge how to access these services. If I were to ask many of you, you probably wouldn't know who those 5 organizations are who provide those services. Second, there's a lack of coordination among those providers. And when we got involved in this, at the beginning of the recession, looking into this issue, myself and my colleague at the Family Center determined that we were going to look and do something simple. But we found that there were a number of organizations who were already trying to sort out how they were going to coordinate the services that they provide. With these particular charitable programs that exist, or church programs, or community programs, there are a number of challenges as well. Some of the programs have hot meals. Some provide perishable or non-perishable goods. Some are mobile. Some are at particular facilities. Some provide morning meals. Some provide evening meals. Locations vary: east, west, central. Days of the week vary, and times of day vary. And then with certain groups, I'm not going to pick on churches, but I'll use that as an example, they may have a condition that you belong to a certain type of program. So imagine that you are without, or you don't have the food to feed your family, and you've got to figure out, where do I go, what day, hot, cold meal. It's really not a coordinated effort for people to access reasonably. Okay? Donor fatigue from multiple requests. And the two donors right on the stage who can tell you that there are so many people coming. Can you help me with this event? Can you, even individuals? And what we find is when you make a request, people actually are tired. Or they're asking us in the charitable community, please coordinate yourselves so I do not see 30 and 50 of you. I see maybe one or two. But that as yet has not happened. And then there's, can we go back? Thanks. And then there's the duplication of clientele. I don't know how much this happens. Again, there's no coordinated database. I don't see the rationale for punishing people because they need food. It might be helpful. I doubt that there's a lot of people abusing the system, but there is a perception that this does exist, and there are people who know how to work the system. So the solution, okay, not everybody at once. The beautiful thing about this presentation, one of the best I've had to prepare, they said I don't have to have any of the answers. So I don't have any solutions. We'll leave it for you. Not everybody put up their hand at once. How are we going to tackle this? But what I wanted to do was to provide for you, as I did for the commission, the extent, at least in the helping services, of the difficulty of gauging the extent of the problem and our capacity. And my organization has not provided an official statement on price controls. I do have a member of my board, Vice Chair, Ms. Harvey, Aston Harvey, here tonight. We have not done that, but my advice would be that we would first look at what is available, the extent of the need, how are people managing, and what we have that's existing, and whether or not that system is effective before we start doing things, messing with free market principles and so on, of which we do not know or understand what the unintended consequences might be. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I think I'm just going to follow on from my fellow panelists, and I'm going to wear my former hat as a research statistician with the Department of Statistics, and I can also wear my hat as a father of four and one who makes frequent visits to food stores. Whilst I was at the Department of Statistics, one of the things that they did was to cross-train the statisticians in different areas. And one of my areas of responsibility was the Consumer Price Index. So I think I'm just going to elaborate on how the Consumer Price Index works for some of you who may not know. It starts off with what we call a household expenditure survey. That's what determines what goes into the basket of goods. And there are literally hundreds of items that go in there. And so what the process is there's a number of families that are selected to monitor their expenditures, every single expenditure for, I think, a period of about 1 month. And then all of that data is collected. So every single thing they spend is recorded. Their income, their expenditures, everything is recorded. And so we get a picture of what sort of goods and services people are utilizing. And then from that, the basket of goods is compiled. And so once the basket of goods is compiled, then every single month, interviewers go out or data collectors go out and gather the information from the establishments. So they would physically go to the stores and pick up the items and price them and come back and compile all that information. Sometimes they can call and get the information. And so when you see at the end of the month that the price of goods have gone up by 3% or whatever, it's because they have gone out and actually priced those items. And so you might say, well, my goodness, those people are lying. The stuff I buy, I purchased this last week, and it's going up $1 this week, and that's because the Consumer Price Index is a general index for a collective, from those families' collective purchases. Your purchases may differ from what is in the Consumer Price Index. In the UK, on their statistical website for the Consumer Price Index, they actually have a mechanism where you can go in and select the goods that's in your basket, and you can monitor your own cost of inflation. So it's a general measure of the rise of goods and services in Bermuda. And so that's what most countries use, and that's how we determine how prices are rising, and then how prices and if they're falling. And the other thing too is, once that's been established, what things impact on the prices of goods and services. I think the chairperson, she mentioned about the price of grain. The other thing, a significant contributor to the cost of goods is the price of oil. Because we need it for shipping, we need it for flying, all of those things impact, and so that impacts on the prices of goods and indeed, to some extent, services. So if the price of oil is rising, then you can pretty much bet that your Consumer Price Index is going to be rising. I think I heard in the United States that they can tolerate up to about $4 for a gallon of gas. Price of oil is over $100 right now. If that continues to go up, it will have some impact on the inflation rate, and you'll see that in the cost of goods and services. So I just wanted to give you an overview of how we measure prices, because that's what you hear every month about the cost of goods and services and how they go up, to give you some insight, if you didn't already know, how we manage that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all of the panelists, each of the panelists, I should say. And just by way of background real quick also, you may be asking yourselves, why did we choose these individual panelists? And to some degree, are we addressing your actual issues? And just so you know, what happened was we chose to go through various stakeholder interviews, and then based upon that, decided that it would be good to have a representation of those in the community that actually participate in the whole idea of getting food to Bermuda and then selling it. And so now, what we would like to do is invite yourselves to come to the mic. There'll be one there, maybe one room, and we'll see how it goes, to give us information, ask any questions. If you choose, you can ask a question of a particular panelist, or you can just choose a general question, and we'll do our best to provide information. I do caution, though, that we are not here to try to defend a position or to necessarily answer all your questions. It really is more an opportunity for us to hear from you, and I guess for you to hear from yourselves, and then have an exchange in that sense. And so based upon that, we are open to hear your concerns or your questions about your experiences, really, about buying things. What I will say as you come to the mic there is that the one thing that we have found is that in Bermuda, you have various what I call price points for the supermarkets and others that provide food. And I have been surprised, to be honest, in terms of identifying or understanding which stores do which. Because in my mind, before this process started, I used to think that I knew which store was the so-called low-cost provider, which was the high-end provider, and all those in between. But I came quickly to realize that my perception was definitely not reality. So I'm open to any questions you may have, please.